In this challenge review, we'll take a look at how to turn all of the spheres green. The first thing we need to do here is we're going to define this function. So we're going to have a void turn all green here. And once we define turn all green, how do we actually do that? We have a reference to all of the rigid bodies. From the rigid bodies, we could actually get the other components if we wanted to. We could also just cache all of the sphere components right here predetermined if we wanted to as well. And that might actually be the better solution rather than dynamically doing it at runtime. So here we can just say private mesh renderer, and we'll grab the meshes. All right, so here we have all of the meshes, and inside of void start, we will assign them. So here the mesh, and what we're going to do is actually we're going to say for each, or a for loop. We need to loop through all of the spheres. So for int I equals 0, well I is less than the spheres.length, I plus, I'm basically going to say, hey, underscore mesh sub 0 is going to equal mesh sub 0 is going to equal underscore spheres sub 0, and actually it's going to be sub I, sorry, I is 0, so this is going to be I equals spheres I dot game object get component the mesh renderer. And there we go. Now, in order to do this, we're going to get a null reference exception because we didn't specify a size for the mesh. So we need to make sure that that is going to match the same size as this. And so the way we can do that is we're just going to define it here. We're going to say underscore meshes equals new mesh renderer array, and we specify the size of 3 elements. So we're going to have 3 elements, which is mapped to 3 spheres. And here we're going to loop through, we're going to grab those components. Just so we can see this happen, I'm going to serialize this field here, just so we can watch what happens at void start. So if we go to our game manager, we can see here we have meshes. And when I run the application, I want to see that all 3 spheres are getting assigned. And you'll see here we have an error where we're basically accessing meshes that don't exist. And that's a problem. So here we specify that it's a 3 here, but the script already saved. It didn't actually do anything. We need to reset the script for that to work. Or what I can do is I can actually say, okay, cool. We'll define the size in void start. So here underscore meshes equals new mesh renderer. And we specify the length. So let's save that and see if it fixes our error. Here we go. We have our meshes. And there we go. All 3 of them are getting assigned just fine, which is fantastic. So inside of our game manager, I can actually remove the serialized field. It was more so just to confirm that they are getting assigned properly. Now that they're assigned, what do we want to do? Well, we just want to loop. We're going to say, hey, for each mesh. So for each var mesh in our meshes, then what do I want to do? Mesh.material.color is going to equal to color.green. And ideally, we should null check them as well, but we really don't have to. We know that they're getting assigned properly. If there was an issue, it would actually error out right here when we tried to assign them. So this looks like it's good. We access the mesh renderers. And let's test it out. We now need to actually call that function. When do we call that function? It's going to be right here. This was the last drop, so we call turn all green. And then we can test it out. Turn all green. Call that function. Let's hop into Unity, hit play, and we'll see what happens. We hit space, and you'll see here that they all turned green. So what happened there? Why did they all turn green immediately? And if we look at this, I called the drop the next sphere, and current drop is currently 0. We hit space, it becomes 1. We drop the next one, it becomes 2. And really what needs to happen here is if this is greater than or equal to 3, then current drop is going to be equal to 3 or 2 really. It's 0, 1, 2. This here actually probably doesn't matter. We just want to make sure it doesn't continue, I guess. But here it's getting called too early, and then we want to call turn all green. So let's rerun this. We hit the space key, and it got called just 1 too soon. So let's take a look at that logic and understand what the heck's going on here. So current drop is equal to 2. Let's change that to current drop is equal to 3. I'm just curious if that's going to block it. Because it starts at 0. We hit space, it's now 1. We hit the next one is 2, the next one is 3, and then it should stop. So there we go. Okay, and on that second one, and we're getting an index out of range now. And the reason for that is because we're accessing the current drop here. And so what we want to do is check. We need to understand what this current drop value is. So to do that, I'm going to serialize this field. We need to watch current drop as the game is running. And I'm going to pause it every time it touches the floor so we can understand what's happening. If I look on our game manager, with current drop is set to 0. I hit space, current drop is now 1. And so it's going to, if we frame by frame, it's going to detect the floor. And then current drop immediately becomes 2. And that's a problem because I don't know. I think it became 2 after it dropped it. So here it was a 1. Here it's a 1. It drops number 1, which is actually the second one, right? Numbers start at 0, so 0 and 1. And then here we increment it, so it's now 2. And then we drop the second one. We drop number 2, and then it gets checked again. And so we only want to increment. We only want to increment if the current drop is really not equal to 2. If it's not equal to 2, then we're going to go ahead and increment the current drop. If the current drop is equal, to 2, then what do we need to do? If the current drop is equal to 2, then we want to turn all green. And I already can see why this is breaking. So if we test this out here, I think we're going to fix the error. However, on the second one, it's still going to turn green. It's going to turn green prematurely. It should turn green as soon as that second one hits the floor. Okay, and actually it turned green much faster than that. And I may have actually hit space twice there. Let me check something. 1, 2, okay, yep. All right, so what's happening? Well, the problem now, let's remove this logic. And let's just see if we fix the issues with the current drop. Make sure there's no errors anymore. We need to figure out how to properly detect if it's the final drop. Something that can tell us it's the final drop. And so here, essentially what we can do is the floor could ask the game manager, check final, it could tell it to check final, or inside of here we can say we need to create a system to check the final. So drop next sphere. If current drop is not equal to 2, then we increment the current drop. A drop hasn't occurred yet. So here, if current drop is not equal to 2, we're going to do this. Else, what does that mean? Else, we should be at the final drop. And so here we should be able to say turn all green. And for shorter syntax, we can clean this up. So let's save this, test it out. Let's hop back into Unity and see how we do. Something is turning it green early. So we're going to rerun that again. We're going to look at the current drop values. We hit the space key once. It's now 1. We're going to let it hit, and it's going to communicate when it hits. It's going to communicate with the game manager. Current drop is now 2. This is now going to fall. And that right there, I think, is the problem. The current drop is now 2, and then it's going to go green. So current drop is 2, and it's now falling. So what happened here? Well, inside of our game manager, if the current drop is not equal to 2, then we're going to increment. But it was 2 this time around. And then it still got called early, and that I'm not 100% sure on. Let's see here. If sphere's current drop is not null, then we enable the current drop. If current drop is not equal to 2, then we're going to increment. And then what happens now if the current drop is 2? If it's 2, then we do that, and we turn all green. I believe this is getting called more than once, though. We're going to add a debug.log here to see how many times this is actually getting called, because it seems to be confusing here. We're going to say drop the next sphere. Let's hop into Unity, and we're just going to track that log. So here we go, we hit space. And how many times did that get called? It got called 3 times. So how did it get called 3 times? It got called once when it landed here, once when it landed here, and once when it landed here. So 3. So what we can do here is if current drop is going to actually be less than 3. If it's less than 3, then we're going to increment current drop. Else, we're going to do this stuff. And then we might need to just detect if current drop is less than 3, then we do all of this stuff. And this is going to allow us to kind of bypass this. So here, if the current drop is less than 3, then we'll go ahead and do all this fun stuff. If it's less than 3, we increment the current drop. So let's just increment it here as well. And then if it's not less than 3, we're going to go ahead and do an else statement and turn all green. So let's save our code, hop into Unity, and test this out. So it's a little bit cleaner now. Let it compile, run Unity, and let's see. And there we go. Boom. Everything is now how it should be. I'll see you in the next one.